sheet. Hey, nobody's perfect. We have it perfect now for you guys. We are underway. William Jensen going to play a Temple Garden untapped. He's going to go down to 18. He is going to play an Elvish Mystic, and he is underway. The thing about Jensen's deck, his Elves deck, 12 1-mana accelerants in the Mystic, the Arbor Elf, and Avacyn's Pilgrim. So he's going to try to run down Remeika before he can get anything set up.
There are a ton of ways to cast a turn 3 Garruk Caller of Beasts.
Yeah. And one of the easier ways to do that revolves around Elvish Archdruid, which he does have on turn 2. He can threaten 6 mana next turn with a land, and he already has 5.
Kill an elf, Burning Tree, maybe a Mizzium Mortars, kill an elf.
I would kill one if I had it.
Oh, play the Dan Paskins game. You're red. Kill the elf. Do you have it?
It's a Flint of Boar and passing the turn
this
back.
This is scary.
Jensen untaps very quickly. This could get ugly for Remeika.
Even if Jensen does not have a land, there are 8 5-drop spells in his deck that are all scary. The Colonian Hydra is scary. Wolfer Silverheart is certainly scary.
Yeah, he has 4 of each of those. And what often happens in the Green Mirrors, Adrian, as you probably know through history's past, the bigger creature in the Green Mirrors wins. That's why Silverheart dominated Green Mirrors during Pro Tour Avacyn Restored, that block constructed tournament. As Jensen is just going to play Temple Garden tapped, he's got an Avacyn's Pilgrim, which is not an elf, and just passes the turn back, so no explosive big spell.
Could be turbo nothing. One of the problems with the elf-style lists, or for that matter, older artifact explosive mana lists, you need to cast something with all that mana, or it does you no good.
Yeah. So just an Avacyn's Pilgrim passes the turn back again. That is a human, it is not an elf, so it will not get that benefit from Elvish Archdruid. As here comes Remeika into the red zone with a Flint of Boar and a Burning Tree Emissary. Jensen gonna take it right on the chin, go down to 13.
There are no instants in the main deck, so if it's not Jensen's turn, consider him pushing F6. No instance to be speaking of into game 1.
So let's see what Remeika is gonna follow up with here. He has a Gyre Sage, and he's just going to pass the turn back, so not a very explosive start for him at all. Jensen does have a Craterhoof Behemoth in his hand. It looks like he just drew a Wolf or a Silverheart too, so now it's time to scratch the head and figure out, oh boy,
there he is, and he is
do.
Literally fingers into the hair, scritch, scritch, scratch, think, think, think. Lots of options here. Access at this point, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 mana, plus 1 if he's got one in the hand. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 7 mana.
You see Jensen considering his options. Does he want to maybe play land, play the Craterhoof Behemoth that's in his hand? It would get a little bit bigger as there's a Sun Petal Grove, or does he want to wait a little while for that Craterhoof Behemoth, get Wolfir Silverheart established first, and then go from there? Again, when you're playing as a green-red deck that only does have 2 mana, there's not a ton that can go wrong. Bonfire of the Damned can't come off the top, and Overloaded Mizzium in the Mortars isn't really going to do very much either, so he just wants to make sure he doesn't make a mistake right now because he is pretty far ahead due to these gigantic green creatures in hand.
When he casts this Silverheart, he's going to have the 2 biggest creatures on the table, the Silverheart and whoever his best friend is.
Yep. So now Wolfir Silverheart's going to come in. It's going to Soulbond with the Elvish Mystic, and the Mystic is going to get tough and attack here for 6 because there is an Archdruid. So 1/1, +1/+1 from the Archdruid, and then +4/+4 from the Silverheart that you guys do see on the screen there at home.
And there is a blocker there, Gyre Sage, that does not step in the way, so it's right to his head. John Remeika down to 14.
And if Remeika isn't careful, he could die in this very next turn as he's going to draw a card for his turn, see if he's found a 3rd land or anything to do with that Gyre Sage. He does not look incredibly thrilled about his draw step. Looks like he may play a land though, slid some over. He will play a forest to start things off.
3 mana means he could potentially cast Dome Ray Rod. He also, if he were to lay a creature slightly larger than that Gyre Sage, he could create effectively 4 mana over the course of the turn, though he'd have to split it up between 2 spells.
Yep. You see 3 mana. There is Domri that you did mention, so it can get to fighting something. We could see the Flint of Boar fight the Archdruid. That's exactly what we do see. So Jensen farther away from casting that Craterhoof Behemoth, but he has an 8/8 and a 5/5 on the table in Wolfir Silverheart and Elvish Mystic.
And you can see John did not attack. He did not want to throw away a creature just to get in a little bit of damage right now.
Understandably so. Jensen gonna pay. Plays a land, 6 mana. This is a Garruk Caller of the Beast.
And I think he's not going to make a phone call. He's going to make a dramatic entrance Boom! Down comes the Crater Hoof. I think this is going to do it.
I think this is a lot of damage that Remeika cannot afford to take. Crater Hoof's trigger, you're going to see him
it's
pick
over.
up everything. So William Huey Jensen, due to Garrett Caller the Beast's second ability, Dramatic Entrance, as it is known, puts Crater Hoof into play. Bunch of triggers, whole bunch of damage, and Elves up a game over green-red aggro. And we take a look at Remeika's deck list, because he's going to be on the play first, Adrian. His main deck is not configured very well to be able to beat this kind of strategy.
I mean, that was a 30-point trampling attack. And what does he have in the sideboard? Something that could be useful in that kind of situation. Fog.
Okay.
He's got 2 fogs. Now, in addition to his fogs, he also has a ton of cheap removal. Most importantly, 1 Electrickery, which could just murder William Huey Jensen's entire team. But on top of that, 3 Pillar of Flames and a Garrick Relentless as a repeatable, we'll call it a murderer, really, when it comes to Elves.
Yeah, you know, the one thing...
Well, 1 murder, anyway.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing that he can do, you know, thankfully, is he can actually interact with these early mana accelerants with the cards that you just listed. He also has a neat effect here in Zealous Conscripts. He can take a Colonial Hydra, he can take a Wolfer's Silverheart, maybe a Crater Hoof Behemoth, even though it will only be a 5/5. Maybe the damage isn't done all the way there. He can steal that and get the last damage for himself. So he actually does have a lot of tools in his sideboard to turn things around. We'll look at Jensen's sideboard here. You talk about Garrick Relentless, he has 3 of his own, so he can actually board some of those in. He's got 2 copies of Ranger's Guile, 3 Acidic Slimes, 4 Strangleroot Geist, and 3 copies of Tree of Redemption. Not a lot of cards in his sideboard that are meant for a green-red aggro deck. I think his overall strategy of his deck just happens to be quite good against green-red.
Yeah, well, one of the things, if you think about some of the awesome things that Jensen can do, if he lays a Silverheart, if he lays a Colonian Hydra, those are some really, really powerful plays, but that does take 5 mana. And between Mizzium Mortars, Electrickery, Pillar of Flame, it's certainly going to be a part of Remeika's strategy to try to make that moment be delayed a little bit. Now let's pretend Jensen gets down a Colonian Hydra, feels pretty good about a 2-turn attack. Attack with the Colonian Hydra once, follow up a second attack for 16 for the win. Well, what if John Remeika, that first Hydra attack comes in, and then John says, okay, cool, my turn with your Hydra, Zealous Conscripts. That seems like an amazing swing of events.
That would be terrifying.
One of the possible things that he can do about that, the only thing he could do against that kind of play, are 2 Ranger's Guiles in the sideboard. Now, typically, Ranger's Guile is there to stop a card like Azorius Charm, that kind of thing. But you know what? It might see use depending on how much John Remeika shows him in this game.
Yeah, you know, I don't think this is a card that Jensen sideboarded in
not this game.
For game number 2, but we could see him sideboard in for game number 3. I would be surprised if his configuration for Huey did change a lot. Again, his overall strategy of just a lot of mana accelerants into Garrett Caller of Beast, the Hydra, or the Behemoth, or even the Silverheart is a difficult one for Remeika to actually be able to stop. So it's on Remeika, excuse me, to actually show that he can stop it before I think Jensen decides to change anything.
One of the things, you heard all of those removal spells that Remeika has. In a lot of ways, what he's going to try to do, most likely, is slow down his beatdown and instead turn himself into a more controlling deck. And if he is able to successfully do that, win with whatever he has left. It could be anything at that point if he manages to dismantle Jensen's board. Cards.
Go ahead.
Some of the cards that I think I would expect to see move out of this deck, I don't know that he needs to have a card like Gore Clan Rampager. I don't think he's going to be playing the rush game. And after that, it can become anyone's guess about what he wants to take up. A lot of these cards are just very good on their own. So Arbor Elf, for example, from Remeika, it's only 4 1-mana accelerants as opposed to 12 1-mana accelerants, but it does get him to things like Domery Rod a turn sooner, which is always very good.
If you guys are just joining us, Cedric Phillips, Adrian Sullivan here in the booth, Star City Games Open Series here in New Jersey. It was featuring the Invitational. I guess you could say that it still is.
Still featuring it.
Yeah, the Invitational is just on a hiatus right now, as we do have our top 8 players, and I've already seen some of them. They are testing away, getting ready for tomorrow morning when the action for them begins at noon, but we'll start our coverage at 11:30 for the top 8 of that Invitational. Right now, though, we are in our standard open, round 10 of 11. That's not a typo. 11 rounds.
Oh, wow.
Very close to 1,000 people, our largest standard open ever. As we are underway for game number 2 here, Remeika with an Arbor Elf to get things started, Jensen with a Forest, and one of his own as game 2 is underway.
You might think this is a mirror, but on turn 2, things will probably change up, and you'll start seeing the differentiation between these two decks. Kill the elf, John Remeika? Is that what's going to happen? We'll find out.
If he can, I think he takes the opportunity to, after he saw what Jensen's capable of in that game, but he's just going to pass the turn
pass
back.
with the Arbor Elf open. 3 mana, there are no 3 mana instants. He does have some 2 mana spells that he could cast. Electrickery with the a little bit of kick on it. And other than that, we see a Strangleroot Geist come in from Jensen.
So Carter wasn't sure if he was going to sideboard in. He's actually boarding that in this matchup. He's got a Sun Petal Grove and another Arbor Elf. So is it Electrickery time now here for Remeika? Which, I mean, that's what it feels like he's representing, but he does not have it, so he's just going to draw a card. It doesn't look like it's very explosive start at all.
Yeah, I mean, I thought I saw a Domery Rod in his hand last turn, but I could have been mistaken. Is that near the front of his hand?
I'm not quite sure if maybe that was his draw step for the turn or not, but he had nothing for his second turn. He's certainly going to need something for his third one, Adrian, to be able to interact with Jensen's incredibly explosive Elves deck.
Next turn, if Jensen has a land, that would be access to 5 mana.
And his deck is so good at creating 5 mana on turn 3. And, you know, it's a regular thing for his deck, so he can play the Colonial Hydra on turn 3. He can play a Wolfir Silver on turn 3 with the greatest of ease. As you see, Remeika does play a Mountain to start off his turn. It's time for a spell, John. What you got?
Starts out, taps a red, well, perhaps a green, but probably a red. 4 mana.
All right.
There we go.
So Garrick Relentlessly, one of in his sideboard, shows up to the party. But is it going to pump out a wolf, or is it going to fight an Arbor Elf? And it is going to pump out a wolf and pass the turn back.
And I would not want to be sitting in John Remeika's shoes. Most likely one of the scary 5-drops could hit right now. We'll see if Jensen has that land to make it happen.
He does have a land. And it is a Wolfir Silverheart. So in comes the Strangleroot Geist. It has a new Facebook relationship pairing up with the Wolfir Silverheart, saying, John, would you like to block with that wolf token or not?
Best friends forever.
Yep.
Dead Wolf. That's
so,
a huge Strangleroot Geist.
Yeah, that thing sitting right now, it is a 6/5, potential to be a 7/6 moving forward.
If you look at the amount of power on Jensen's side of the table, that is just a ton. We've got 8 from the Silverheart, we've got 6 from the Strangleroot Geist for 14, 2 more from the Elves, 16 power on the table. And apparently his name is Remeika, according to Kenny White on Twitter.
Sure.
If you're just joining us, I'm Adrian Sullivan here with Cedric Phillips. This is SCG Live, the StarCityGames.com Open Series featuring the Invitational. Invitational in the books right now. This is the 11-round Standard Open. 10 rounds in, well, this is the 10th of those 11 rounds.
So let's see what John wants to do to navigate this turn. Again, he does have that Garrick Relentless. He can pump out another wolf token like he did last turn. Maybe he finds it right to fight an Arbor Elf this turn. He's going to start his turn off with a Forest. And see what his follow-up is going to be, if any. Hiding his hand pretty well there. There's a Zealous Conscript, so we had the feeling we might see him board this in. He's going to take that Wolfir Silverheart and break the bond.
The friendship is broken. Now, the Silverheart can make a new friend later.
Yes.
But for now, the Silverheart is friendless.
So you see Zealous Conscripts on the screen, gain control of target permanent, so end of turn. Untap it, it does gain haste. Very good against large green creatures, also great against Silverheart at breaking the bond that it did have with Strangleroot Geist. So how does John want to use this brand new Wolfir Silverheart? It looks like he's just going to attack with that. Going to attack Jensen for 4. Again, not going to be an 8/8. Maybe this thing's going to fight something? He's just going to make a wolf token and give it back to Jensen.
We see the untap. Possibly 6 mana will be arrived at in this coming turn if there's a land. And there is a land in hand. Does he have a 6-drop? The 6-drop in his deck, Garrick, Caller of Beasts. There are, of course, other 5-drops. The 5-drops could be more Silver Hearts, could be Colonian Hydra, could be, even if you just went a little bit smaller, you could do something, for example, like Archdruid.
Yeah. But it is going to be Garrett Collar of base. He's going to put
Oh
in
my
Behemoth,
God.
partner up with the Wolfear Silverheart, resolve the triggers, and attack for a metric ton of damage.
Wow.
Here, again, the Behemoth is going to have +5/+5, as are the rest of the friends, and that is going to do it. William Huey Jensen with mono green. Crater Hoof Behemoth, maybe this deck should be called Hoof. There it is. Defeats John
Wow.
Remeika 2-0. Elves defeating green-red aggro pretty soundly there.
That was really, really resoundingly overwhelming, honestly.
Yes. I think just Jensen's overall strategy of accelerate into broken green threats is one that John is simply not prepared to beat. And talking with Huey over the course of the day, a lot of his opponents have not been prepared to beat what he's putting on the table and what he's trying to accomplish over the course of the games. They aren't interacting very well with Arbor Elf, Elvish Mystic, and Avacyn's Pilgrim accelerating out huge threats ahead of schedule.
Yeah, I mean, the elf strategy is, of any moment in history,